Hey guys, it's Nick here. I wanted to run you through a really cool old school Russian vintage lens that gives you an incredible characteristic that might be useful when portraying anything that's kind of otherworldly or outside of the norm, or maybe you want to use it as a really special kind of beauty lens. It is the Helios 44-2 58mm f2 lens. It's a beauty. I just recently used it on a short film and I want to talk about my experiences with it. So I'm currently DOP for a short kind of psychological horror short film, and over the weekend we just shot a scene that kind of illustrates the isolation that a character was experiencing and her transition from super crazy to maybe not so crazy. And there are so many ways you can obviously help the audience understand that progression. One of the first things I wanted to do was basically have this character start with a lot of contrast on her face and really heavily lit from one side. And by the end of, it's really a 6 to 7 shot sequence and montage getting her to the end of a week. She's a little bit more complementarily lit, so we don't have as much contrast on one side of her face, and we go from an extreme low angle and keep kind of progressing until we're back to pretty much eye level, where she's back to normal, temporarily anyway. I had the plan moving forward that I would light that way, but I was picking up some extra gear because you can never have too many standby lights from a mate, and I saw this lens sitting on a shelf. Like I said up front, it's the Helios 44-2 58mm lens. Now, if you're into vintage lenses, you may already know about the existence of this one. If you're into finding cinema kind of glass and modding vintage glass into a cinema lens set, then again, you may already kind of be aware. But for those who aren't, Helios is a Russian lens brand design. There's a good few in there that try to replicate and kind of work from a particular Carl Zeiss lens configuration and design to get a certain kind of look. And in fact, that design is still used in a lot of Sony lenses today. The 44-2 does that and a little bit more. So the 44-2, basically each one is designated, 44, there's a 42, 102, whatever. I don't know, I really genuinely don't know where that designation comes from, but there are some in the set that are, number one, really sharp, or as sharp as you need them to be. Number two, give a really interesting look. And so those two things combined might suit a particular look you're going for. So the 44-2 is a 58mm lens, so kind of, not telephoto, but getting there. Certainly not a wide lens, and it's an f2. And this lens design that they kind of used for these lenses means they can be a little bit faster. So this is an f2 prime. Now, the great thing about these lenses, the 44-2 Helios, they're mostly found in kind of the Eastern Bloc in Russia. There may be some available near you, but even lenses with really good quality that don't have fungus or mold or anything, have been treated nicely, you can get anywhere between $50 to $100. Maybe a little bit more, there may be shipping obviously. But I saw this sitting on a mate's shelf and I remembered that this lens has a specific characteristic that you don't really find in vintage lenses, you don't really find in current contemporary lenses, unless you're looking at some special lenses, especially spherical lenses. If you're into the anamorphic look, then this might not be such a big deal. But we're shooting this short on spherical lenses. 99% of what I do is with spherical lenses. So the Helios fits in there, and what this tends to do is, I think, renders fairly nice skin tones, but more importantly, it gives you a very interesting bokeh. It's known as the Swirly Bokeh lens, and it is a really cool way to illustrate a different style of cinema or capture, I guess, or image, whatever you want to call it. So I started thinking, oh, I wonder, should I film this sequence? Most of what we're filming on for the entire short is just going to be on the Sigma Art series of lenses, so nice and crisp and contemporary. But I thought, well, maybe I could actually film this particular sequence. Maybe I should film it on a specialty lens like this. And I started to think about what the character was going through at that stage. It was very insular. She hadn't really shared anything with anyone else at this stage before she starts this treatment. And so I thought, well, it'd be really cool to have this, almost like if she's in center frame, we have this swirliness, kind of weird out of focus areas happening. That speaks to the mindset of the character. It's just, you know, it's a 15-second sequence, maybe not even that. But I thought it's just an extra little characteristic, an extra little flavor that we can throw into the mix there to just speak to what the character was experiencing. So I really like that. I saw that on a shelf and I said, hey, I'm going to grab that if you don't mind. And looking into the cost of them, they're fairly widely available. Obviously, you just need to be careful of the quality of the lens you're getting, making sure there's no scratches or anything like that. But it's so damn cheap, and I'm really liking the effect that this gave me over the weekend. So I'm going to pick one up for sure. But if you're using a lens like this, something that has a characteristic in the bokeh, in the out of focus areas, there are a few things you've got to consider, because I use this lens for the entirety of that sequence. So we had some close-ups of the actress, and then we also had close-ups of her hand or interacting with things that we shot with this lens. So it does pose a bit of a challenge when you think about, you need things that are going to give you very obvious bokeh. So a very obvious point would be, everyone uses them to show off the characteristics of this lens. Fairy lights or really small bulbs, and you just throw them out of focus and you will see immediately the curvature of the bokeh. It's really an interesting effect. Implementing this then in a narrative setting becomes a little bit more difficult if you're trying to make sure that everything from the set design to the lighting is motivated from the character's standpoint, but also motivated in the environment. So when we're at eye level, I kind of took the leap. They're all filmed in day. I took the leap and we put a couple of small little bulbs behind her. Then, well, maybe she's, you know, just dressed on this bookshelf. You know, it's kind of justifiable. You know, you have to have them on, and in a bright lit scene, like, would it really be on? Yeah, but it looks nice. Whatever, it looks nice, right? So that first kind of shot, which was the end shot of the sequence, the shot I just showed you, that was easier to kind of showcase showcase the characteristic of that lens, right? And we're just holding on there for a few moments. But at the top of the sequence, at the top of the montage, we go from really low and where she looks the craziest, and then slowly kind of come up until we're eye level, where everything is normal again temporarily. So when you're down that low and you just have the ceiling and it's day, so you can't really put any lights up there and have them on, because again, it's just not really justifiable in my book. How can you really show off the characteristic of the lens? That was really tough. I don't know if you really do get that in that very first shot. Obviously the lighting helps, it's a lot cooler, we know something's a little bit off there. But the actress held the pill kind of sequence bottle thing, pill dispenser, whatever, in her hand, and we actually had her hold that in the foreground because I wanted anything in that plastic just to catch some kind of specular highlight or just some kind of like semi-reflection, so that when we stay on her face, maybe there's some telltale signs of the bokeh there. You know, probably not noticeable by a lot of people, but we know it's there, right? Then moving up to eyeline, as I said, a lot easier to kind of put something in the background that's going to give us that reflection. Lights are the easiest way to do that, but you could do it in other ways. You can do it with leaves and foliage, especially if you've got some wind moving through them, so you're going to get that kind of little dappled reflections and bokeh in the background. That's going to really point to this characteristic. But where I think it worked well was in the close-ups as well, where she's picking things up from a table or interacting with the pills in her hands. We made sure that we shot around the sink. We have glasses that are just pinging some of the lights around the scene. We have the metal reflectance of the sink. There's just these little areas that, again, it's subtle, but it is there. It just shows us that something is happening to this character's mind or in their mindset. The thing I probably recognize is that if you're using a specialty lens like this, you have to try and give it the elements it needs to show off those characteristics. I found actually that the further away your points of illumination are, or whatever it is that you want to appear as your bokeh, the further away they are, the more easily they'll get that circular bend and characteristic in the bokeh. Whereas if you've got someone in the foreground, even if you're on close focus at whatever this close focus is, I think it's about 50 centimeters. Even if something's just a couple of meters behind them, you'll still get some of that characteristics, as you can see, but it won't be as pronounced as if you get a little bit more distance on it. So that's maybe a consideration to have. But overall, fantastic. A fast lens, a really cool little tool, super cheap, so I'm going to just grab one just to have if ever the need arises that I want a dreamy kind of sequence, or I again want to kind of show off that the characters, something's happening to the character's mindset. What do you think on the look of this lens? Does something like this interest you? Do you ever use specialty lenses? What are they? Let me know what they are and how you've used them. I'd love to hear with a comment below. And I'll be giving you a little bit more of a rundown on some of the other gear that has come in really handy for this short film I'm currently working on. It's all good fun. All right, thanks guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.